You're listening to the Lovefly podcast. It's Paul Tizzard, fearofflying coach, and welcome. Today, the table's been turned, and I'm actually going to be interviewed by Susan Mungeam, co-founder. So I'm going to shut up. Welcome to the podcast, Susan.
I'm not sure whether you're joining me or I'm joining you
I don't know.
evening. But,
I'm a bit scared.
Nevertheless, I'm looking forward to this. So I've just got a few questions. I hope that's okay. I'm going to take you by surprise maybe with some of them.
Yeah, I think that's quite good actually, because that's what I do to people. So it's quite weird to be on the receiving end.
Yeah. Well, I'm just aware that, you are the co-founder of Lovefly. People listen to your podcasts and have a look at the Facebook page, but perhaps people don't know a lot about you. So I thought it might be nice to have find out a little bit more about you, really.
Yeah, but what if the membership goes down as a result of it?
Well, that's always a concern, isn't it? Let's see. So I wanted to start off this evening, actually, just by finding out a little bit, in terms of the background, what got you started in aviation initially?
Oh, gosh. Well, originally, I was working at the airport and working for Harrods, and one of the guys working on the shop floor said, "You ever thought about being cabin crew?" And I was like, "No." It was like the last thing on my mind, because I've been in the military and I was working at Harrods, and I was like, not at all, but he said, "I think you quite like it." And it kind of popped an idea in my head, and I just thought, so I was in my early 20s, I didn't really know what I was going to do, so I thought, well, why not? So I did. So I applied to Virgin to be cabin crew, and I got in. Me and my flatmate both applied at the same time, both got in, and then we were put on hold because of the Gulf War, I think, and they said, "All right, so if you're still interested, just let us know." But they said it took 2 years. I was on hold for 2 years, and in that time I did a couple of other jobs. But they just, every sort of 3 or 4 months, they wrote and said, "Look, if you're still interested, you need to just write back and say yes." So I just was like, "Yeah, all right." And then it all kind of beautifully fitted in. I was doing another job, and at the point where I was just coming to the end of that, it was a contract. I got a letter from them saying, "Right, we you can start next month if you want." I was like, "Oh my goodness!" So that's how I started in aviation. It wasn't something that occurred to me because I hadn't flown till I was 18 in the military, and so I'd never been on a plane, and so it wasn't a big thing in my mind, and hadn't done a lot of travel. But at that point, so I just thought, "Oh, this would be a good way to go around, see places," and it was no deeper than that.
Yeah, but that's really interesting for me, that actually your entry into this came from perhaps your own desire to see the world, and get out a bit and do things, rather than coming from a place initially of wanting to help people.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't want to help people. No, not at all. No, it wasn't that. Oh, it's kind of always done roles which involve service in some way. So it wasn't that much of a surprise. But growing up in the West Country of the UK is, it's a lovely area, but also it just wasn't a thing. We just didn't. We just didn't do flights when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Not really.
And I suppose my question from that is then, from working as cabin crew, how did you become interested in helping people to overcome their fear of flying? Where did that come from?
Well, initially it wasn't that. It was I was interested in becoming a trainer. So when I'd been in the military at about 18 years old, I remember seeing this instructor sat on the edge of his table chatting with us, and we were, it was a really nice atmosphere, and I just remember looking at it and thinking, I fancy doing that. So I'd done a lot of train the trainer type courses in the military, but I couldn't quite see how it was going to pan out. And so when I joined the airline, I saw 2 people doing the training, and about Ruth and Pete, who both like listen to the podcast, and I remember thinking to them, oh, I'd like to do that. Pete was doing much more like the customer care, like facilitation stuff, and Ruth was doing the flight skills stuff with service training. I just thought, I looked at that and thought, I fancy doing that. And within a couple of years, I was in the training department, so I was very lucky to get in quite quickly. And once I was in the training department, then I used to see Richard Branson around all the time, and he always used to say, have you got any ideas, contact me, blah, blah, blah. So I used to bug him all the time, really. And I won a couple of trips away as well. You get nominated for these things. And I used to see him on those. I'd go, Richard, what about this thing? And he'd go, oh, God, sod off, leave me alone. And then the start of it really was one of those really weird things, because I knew a guy who was a hypnotherapist, a guy called David Lando, and we were chatting once, and he said, we should do something together. And he was really keen to get a relaxation channel on board the aircraft. And I said, yeah, all right, I'll write to, the powers that be and see what happens. And as a footnote, I said, and we should be running courses as well. And Richard Branson wrote back within about a day and said, yeah, love the idea. So he wanted to do the courses, and the relaxation channel came about 2 years later. So, but it was just, I suppose I've always been interested in psychology. You may or may not know this, my mum was a hypnotherapist, so I was always around sort of that type of stuff. So it wasn't alien to me to be interested in psychology and wanting to help people. And both my parents had been in service industry. My dad was in the police, mum was a nurse before they did their other stuff. And so it just, I suppose it all kind of came together, really, I suppose.
Okay. And how long ago was that now? Without giving away too much, when do you remember when you ran your first fearofflying course?
So I wrote to Richard Branson in 1996. Near the end of 96, and then he put me in touch with Steve Ridgway, as a CEO or something at the time, and he said, go away for 6 months, come up with some proof that people want this. And then the actual first course was 1st of November 1997, which had 8 people on it. And they're all recruited they came through special assistance. So a lot of people who are scared of flying will phone the airlines and say, I need some help, can you let the cabin crew know? And I just said, make a note of anyone that comes through and tell them that we might be running a course. And so we managed to get 8 people together as a sort of like a pilot to see how it went.
And I believe that was run somewhere quite interesting. You didn't run it in a classroom or on board an aircraft, did you? It was a sort of an aircraft mock-up. So it was a classroom that was converted. So they just shoved a couple of galleys in it, kitchen areas, and about 25 aircraft seats, I think it was. So it wasn't anything like an aeroplane. But when you went inside, it looked like that. It didn't smell like aeroplane smell, like that odour Boeing. But it had that, you could sort of walk in it. And I think they might have even had a name for it, maybe Diana Rig. It was, shows the age. Yeah. And so, we'll come back to that. I'm obviously aware that, you ran courses in conjunction with Virgin for many years, I believe.
Directly for, as an employee until 2001, from 97 to, so it was like a sideline. I was in training department then. I'd moved from customer service into sort of learning development, HR type training. But it was always like a thing that I did as well as my job,
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit, you've called it, it's called Lovefly. What was the inspiration behind that name? What was behind that for you?
Well, the last course I ran was called Flying Without Fear, which was still not bad. I didn't come up with that title, David Lando did. But it was kind of taken, like a few others, and it also had sort of slightly negative things, so it was kind of flying without the fear. So fear was mentioned, so I didn't want anything with fear in the title, and also wanted it to be bigger than just fear of flying, because the whole thing, I think, going back to this amazing thing that is aviation, is that we have the ability to do stuff which, you know, I certainly when I was growing up never did this, you know. And so I really like the idea that it's positive and it's bigger than just fear of flying. It's like, it's what else, you know, love flying, because that gives you the opportunity to do stuff. And it's just, yeah, just bigger than having here. The fear is something that just gets in the way of it. And once the fear's out of the way, then you just want to expand your horizons and do stuff that perhaps you couldn't do.
Right. So thinking about, I'm aware with the Virgin course that you had a particular structure and particular approach there. You know, you ran quite large courses, I think, you know, 100, 150 people sometimes even. A day course with a flight at the end of the day. Lovefly, you know, you seem to have experimented with a lot of different approaches, and I was interested in that. I just wondered whether you could tell us a little bit about, you know, what inspired you to take a different approach, what you think's worked well, what hasn't.
So over the years, I'll come back to that one with why now, but the sort of like quick history. So the flying without fear, when I started, I did 5 years, and I just had, like, I did it in a classroom and with an aircraft mock-up, because I wanted people to get the information they needed without the pressure of having to take a flight, because at the time it was only British Airways that was running courses, and that they had a one-day course with a flight at the end. And I thought, well, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something different. So we tried it for 5 years, and we probably got 20 or 30 people on the course, maybe once a month. But then it seemed to be that people wanted the flight. And so when the programme expanded, very much became like, well, we're going to have a flight, we need like lots of people. So the courses could be anything from like 50 up to 250 people on them, you know, and people seem to want that kind of one-stop shop. But the thing I always used to feel when I was watching that, it's not that it wasn't effective, because lots of people told me it was, but I used to think it's about timing, because that type of course is full exposure, and I used to feel quite guilty for people, because for some people it'd be more traumatizing for them, or it'd be just too much. And I used to think, what about those folks? Because a lot of people think, oh, I'll just do it in a day, but they didn't learn the fear in a day. It's built over time. And so I just thought maybe people needed something different. So when I left that one and then had a year out, I found people were still contacting me, even though I wasn't on anything, that they just sort of Googled me and said, oh, you know, I came on a course 10 years ago, or I know that you do the fear of flying type stuff, and can I just talk to you, or is there anything? And it just got me thinking that maybe there's other ways that we can help people. You know, there's nothing wrong with those one-day courses. And EasyJet have got one now, and the British Airways will still be doing theirs forever. But I just thought maybe it's really nice to do something else. So that's why I started experimenting. So I put together a 30-day program. So I thought, well, anything, you know, like if I do an exercise app, it has to be 30 days before you even start to notice feeling fitter or something. And I was thinking, well, and everything I've read up since has suggested that it's like 2 to 3 months of continued effort to shift something as powerful as that. And then you've got to keep maintaining that new way of that pattern, because it's, and so the more I thought about it, the more I learned, the more I thought there's nothing wrong with those one-day things, and I might go back to doing that, but I would definitely always offer a 30-day thing. The podcast, because I think people get, it's regular and people get stuff. I like having the Facebook group, because I thought I never did that before and didn't really understand how to do Facebook lives and stuff. So it's just been, I've just had permission to experiment, because it's like, it was not linked to a brand, so I didn't have to get permission from anybody to say, I said, okay, if I do podcast, you know, Mr. Virgin or Miss Virgin. And so it's been quite freeing just to try these things out. So, and then see what people like. And it seems to be the podcast is popular. The Facebook group is going well. The Instagram is slowly growing. You know, and there's probably other things we could be doing as well. 30-day program has a nice little trickle of people, and we run the odd webinar. And the webinar is as good as anything that I ever did at the Virgin, absolutely. But people still want that kind of one-stop shop. So it's not, the take-up for the webinar has been lower than I expected. So I'm still trying to work out what needs to happen there, if anything, you know. So it might be just one of those things that people don't really want to sit and watch a screen for 2.5 hours, who knows?
Yeah, we're all a bit screened out after the
I think so, yeah. It's like spend all day on Teams and Zoom. You think, oh, join a webinar. No thanks.
Yeah. And you also mentioned there, you know, all the different sort of things you've experimented with and thought about, you know, and I can hear that there's new ideas as well. We'll come back to that in a minute. But I'm also aware there's a number of other things that you've done that people might not know about around kind of a fear of flying. I'm aware that you've written a book, you've spoken at conferences, you're doing a piece of research at the moment. I wonder whether you could just tell us a little bit about what else you've done.
So I think just because I know lots of people in aviation, I've been around it and I love aviation, I think it's amazing. And the people are fantastic. So I've been lucky to talk at a few of the IATA conferences, and that's because
IATA is, for those of us who don't know.
Oh, I hope you were not going to ask that. Sorry, Johnny Jasper, if you're listening. Johnny Jasper went from being in charge of like lots of safety things at Virgin to went out to IATA in Canada. IATA is the International Aviation Travel Authority. I don't know. Sorry,
so it's an international body, is it?
Yeah. So it's like that. What they do is they're a membership body that offers advice and procedures. So when the COVID thing happened, they put out lots of advice that then airlines could use. They do stuff around security. They were talking about HEPA filters when where people were worried about travelling and catching the coronavirus. So they're an advisory body, and they support like a massive membership of loads and loads and loads of airlines, and then they put these conferences on a few times a year and get safety professionals along to update them and do that sort of stuff. CPD, I suppose you call it, continuing personal development. And I've spoken at a couple of those conferences. Could have done more. I could have gone this year, but it clashed with some other work, which is gutting. Would quite like to go to Portugal. And so there's that. What was the other thing you asked me about?
Just what else you've done. You've written a book as well.
Yeah, that's on the lovefly.co.uk website. A lot of people have downloaded that, or the audio version of it is in the podcast, episode 69. Quite a lot of people have liked that. I can't listen to it because it's me narrating it, which is about the worst thing. I was trying to get Hugh Grant or some amazing actor to come and do it, but that's me. But some people have said they found it helpful because it's fairly light-hearted. I think, because I always think you should keep things light-hearted, because people are normal that come through this, but they're intelligent, possibly overthinkers, but they're not, they're not crazy people or anything. They're just normal people that've just got into some sort of interesting habits that they can't get rid of to a greater or lesser degree, And the research is around. So I'm doing this master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that was just about improving my own skills as a facilitator and a coach. But I've always loved the positive psychology stuff, but just didn't know enough about it. And so the research I thought I'd do is combine it. So I've coached 5 people to see if coaching in its purest form can actually help nervous flyers, and that's what I'm working at the moment. And some elements of it can, but that's what I hope to finish this month. So if not depending on when this goes out, we're in August right now, beginning of August. So I'm in the eye of the storm. So, dissertation, 2 assignments.
Good luck with that,
yes.
One thing for me that's always very inspiring, I think, is I think people will be aware from your podcasts of how many people you've managed to, that or have some association with. It's spread far and wide in all sorts of different interests and areas in aviation. And I imagine too that over the years I can't imagine how many nervous flyers you've come into contact with over the years. It must be
thousands and thousands.
Yeah,
thousands.
Thousands.
Used to see about 2,000 a year on the Virgin courses.
Right.
So for 20 years, it's a lot of humans.
it's a lot of people and a lot of hands-on experience and knowledge that you've gained there, that you've been able to use. But I wanted thinking about these thousands of people that you've met. What's inspired you most about the people that you've come into contact with? Or what continues to inspire you about these people?
I love the individual struggles. I have to say that I didn't get as much of that when I was running the large style courses. The only people I would tend to sort of, after I'd done the psycho ed talk on the day, psychoeducational, I would kind of lurk. So as we sort of all traipsed off to the airport, I would spot the people that were kind of isolating themselves or looked a bit more worried than others, and then just sort of target them in the nicest possible way and go and talk to them, and quite often I just coach them and just say, why did you choose today? What was it you were hoping to get, and where are you with that, and where's your head right now? And it seemed to be enough. Sometimes there would be enough for them to just sort of make a decision and say, do you know what, I'm going to still thank you for stopping and talking to me. And I always like that bit more than anything, because when I'm doing the big talks, obviously I love public speaking, but that's a different sort of thing, and you don't see individuals, you see a big blob of people, and your job's to get information across as elegantly as possible, But when you talk to somebody one-to-one, then you're trying to understand the world from where they are. And so the bit that I've loved since doing the Lovefly is I feel like I've got to know people better. So everyone I've spoken to on the podcast, people I did the research with, who've been so generous with their time, it's really helped me to sort of understand, and I've heard some amazing stories, and it's the thing that sort of given me is think things can be different. I've always had that sort of belief, if you don't like something, change it, if you can. And that's always been a sort of thing. I've always been a bit quite impatient with myself. I always think, well, if I don't like something, just bloody change it. But you can't always do it that quickly or as easily as that. But so when I see people who are stuck, I feel frustrated for them. So when I hear people that are stuck and then they're shifting, they're chipping away at it, I just think it's amazing, because I've never had a fear of flying. So I can't imagine what it must be like. I've had to overcome other things, but I just look at them and think, you genuinely think you're going to die up there. And then when that person stops thinking that and acts differently, it's just massively rewarding,
And I know there are, fabulous stories on the Facebook group, day in, day out, of people that have,
I know, it's amazing,
gone away
isn't
on
it?
their honeymoon, done all sorts of things, gone on a flight for the first time in, a decade or so. Really very inspiring.
But, in fairness, so that it is a team thing. So, yes, I'll take credit. I did start it, and I didn't really know how to do podcasts. I just thought I'd start and see what happened. And I've never really done Facebook. I did a bit of training with somebody for about half an hour, and then I just thought, sod it, I'll have a go. So I've kind of learned as I've gone along. But the thing that people doing the work now is other people in the group. So somebody puts a message up, and by the time I've got in there's already like 3 or 6 really positive comments from so it's the groups sort of the supporting it. Yeah, it's amazing. It is really amazing.
Yeah, lovely. So I've got 2 more questions for you. So the first one is, what are your 5 top tips?
Oh, what?
Yeah, all these decades of experience. We want 5 top tips.
5?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if they're in the right order, or I'm glad you didn't ask me this beforehand or tell me what you're going to ask, because it's better just to think. I'm buying time now, can you tell? So the first one is, I'd say top tip is the fact to sort of imagine why you're doing this. What is the driver? Be really clear. What's the purpose of doing? Why bother? It's that sort of thing. What's in it for you? And generally that falls into 2 things. You're either moving towards something or moving away. And it's a very simple way of doing it, but it's quite a sort of a basic human thing that's been around for thousands of years. This idea we move towards pleasure and away from pain. So what is that for you? What's the reason for doing this? Is it to be able to go to that wedding, be able to experience things? Is it be able to go and see family members that you haven't seen for years? Is it a really positive thing you want to do? Is it a work thing that you've had to turn down and now you're thinking, I want to take that job, I want to do that? Or is it you just don't want to feel to lose sleep and to hate the thought of flying and have that living with anticipatory anxiety and having to sort of literally cacking yourself every time you fly? So what is the reason? So having that really clear, either towards or away from things. That's the first thing. Second thing I'll say is get some help. And whatever that is, just start today and start small and do something regularly. I always say to people, do it every day, and I feel like I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I don't know if I could be as committed as some of the people that have come through the group. But I know when it matters to me that I can be, and I will consistently do stuff. So I know that if it's something I was motivated to do. And so when I see nervous flyers like that, I say get some professional help and start today. Do stuff today. I don't know if that's 2 and 3 there. I don't know. It's possibly, yeah. Get some professional help. Yeah. Start today. So it's like doing little and often and chipping away at it. And that's what I've seen. The people that do that seem to have sustained results.
Yeah.
Whereas if you sort of like just ignore it, not think about it, or sometimes people will say, look, I've got a flight Monday and I've been avoiding it. I understand that because that's the fear. And all I can help with in that is some coping strategies. But long term, you've got to just plug away and do stuff.
Okay, number 4.
Number 4, don't believe anything in the media. Don't watch those air crash investigations. Don't let anybody talk to you about their, let me tell you my Magaluf plummet story, because one of the things that is a consistent thing that happens is people who are nervous flyers, there's always some bastard in their family that comes up to them and says, oh, you won't guess what happened on my flight. And they're like, I don't like flying, why would you do that? But they seem to think that that's okay, and actually it doesn't help. So you've got to say, no, I don't want to hear it, I'm not interested, which is quite hard to do. So it is like you have to be really careful what you let into your head. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it's so pliable, our brain, that if we let all this crap in, then we think that's true and we'll look for more of it and we'll find it, So it's hard, but you just can't do any of that stuff, And lastly, I'd say the 5th tip would be to learn to manage yourself in some way. So I don't mean as in control yourself, because, to get your breathing sorted so you know how to manage your breathing. And to have a strategy for dealing with your thoughts. So it doesn't mean that you have to change them into positive ones. I know some people do that, or they use the elastic band and twang themselves, and these are all great techniques, but I think as a minimum, just to have a sort of compassionate acceptance of the fact that my brain is running riot here and it's got lots of stuff running around. Whatever your strategy is, have one. So find something that works for you and do that. So if you can manage yourself in some way, breathing and thoughts, you're then in a good place to deal with whatever happens when you're up there.
Lovely. Great tips.
Are they? Right, here's 5 more. No.
Okay, so last question. So looking for some spoilers here. What's your vision for Lovefly going forward, and where do you see things going next?
That's a good question.
What should we be looking out for?
So I'm going to redo the 30-day program, not all of it, just some elements of it, because quite a bit of it I had to record during the pandemic, and so the Wi-Fi and stuff wasn't always great in certain parts of it. It was okay, and people have said they found it useful, but so I'd like to update it and also look at it and see if there's some bits that could be swapped out. So that's the sort of, not, maybe people won't even notice that. I'm going to consider, when the membership of the groups and stuff is larger, do we have enough coverage that people would then trust us to do maybe something with a flight? Because I haven't ruled that out, because it can, provided someone's ready, I think the benefit to people going on a flight and hearing a pilot narrate exactly what's happening is massively powerful. And people always say, I fly all the time, but you're just repeating what you've always done. Whereas if you fly in a controlled environment, otherwise we're managing it, and you've got a pilot telling you right, we're now at 15 degrees climb. We've now dropped to 10 degrees climb. We've just turned the engines down a bit with the undercarriage. All those sort of things, because you don't actually know. You don't really know. You might say, well, I travel all the time and I know exactly what happens. Well, you don't, because your body and your brain is tricking you unless you've done something like that. So a narrator. So that's not ruled out. But that I don't think we're ready for that yet in terms of the numbers. I've always wanted to have a membership site. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. It sounds a bit cheesy, but like an inner circle, just like 50 people that we spend more time with, and just for a nominal fee to keep it ticking over. But I'm really quite keen. I was really surprised when I stepped away from the last program, because I'd done it for so long. I wasn't sure whether I still enjoyed doing it or whether it become like a job. And when I had a year away from not doing it, I really missed helping people. So it came back quite organically. So it's been something that's sort of I've been attached to for 25 years now. I don't quite know why. It's just something that for the first 50. I know that I hate this phrase, but most of the time I felt like, who am I to be talking to these people? I feel like that old imposter syndrome thing, which has become a bit cliche now. But I literally did every time I used to stand up in front of hundreds of people, thinking, what right have I got to stand in front of these people, and say stuff? But now I just stop thinking it. I don't have any more right, but I just think, well, why not me? There's at some point you have to go, well, I've been doing it 25 years now. I must have picked up a few things that can help people, and because I've always had this belief that they're normal people, I just want to do stuff that they might like. So it's a membership site, possibly course with flights, maybe update the 30-day program, maybe offer some other things. We do one-to-one courses. We've done a couple of them with simulators and stuff, which have gone down well. We've only run a couple of those this year because it takes a little bit of time to set it up, and not everybody has got that sort of. It's not massively expensive, but it is an investment, and not everyone wants to do that. So that's a potential area that might do more of. What do you think we should be doing? As the other founder.
I seem to remember an idea being floated not long ago about a course, a variation of the 30-day course, not the 30-day course, where, maybe a 6-week course where we would meet, people would have homework to do, maybe come back, there would be a sense of a sort of more a modular approach, but slightly sort of more guided with bits to do. But, exciting. Sounds like there's lots of possibilities for the future.
Well, it's tricky to know what people want, because a lot of people, I'll get a lot of calls and emails saying, I'm flying next week, what can you do for me? And I think, well, not that I can't do something, because some people have done, have come into the Facebook group and had some tips, and other people have helped them, said, do this, go on to Flight Radar, look at your flight for the next 6 days, watch how normal it is, it's going to land. All these little tips, sort your breathing out, listen to this episode of the podcast. And so it is possible to get yourself ready, but I want people to have more than that. But unfortunately, most of us, when it comes to investing in ourselves, will probably spend more servicing our vehicles than we will looking after ourselves. And so the thought of committing to a 6-month program or a 3-month program would not be appealing to most people. But that's my assumption at the moment. And I'd love to be proved wrong on that, but a lot of people and I remember we used to get so many last-minute bookings on the course with the flight. Literally on the Friday night, and it was running on the Sunday. Oh, can we book? And just say, I don't want really. I'm not convinced you'll either turn up or you'll get something from it, because you're literally rushing at it, and so it's that idea. But some people, did prove me wrong time and time again. But I don't know the answer really to what is the ideal, or whether there should be a selection of things. But I guess the freedom.
No one ideal for everyone, but it's offering a range of.
I mean, you've got a strong therapeutic background and practice and stuff, so there may be something that people need, which might be more along that lines, or they might just I just don't know. So I think it's quite exciting that we've got our combined experience, that we can then think what could it be. But yeah, so that's where my head is at the moment.
Yeah, I'm appreciating the Love Island references.
Well, I'm just trying to show I'm current, you know, but failing miserably. So Love Island is this awful program that no, it's in the UK. So for those, I think they have an Australian version.
They do, yeah. I think there's
Is there an American version?
I'm
Get a lot of
not
people
sure.
listening in the US.
I think they maybe not sure. Okay, well, it's been lovely meeting with you tonight, Paul. I hope it's not been too traumatising for you to be on the receiving end for a change.
It's interesting because it's like, you know, we've known each other a long time, and so but there's sort of a strange, like, you're asking me questions that I think you would know, but actually once you ask them, I was finding myself saying things I hadn't said for years, you know. So it was quite interesting, and no, I think I enjoyed it. It was a little bit scary to be on the receiving end of it, you know. No power. Well, I need to be in control, but yeah. So no, thank you.